The war-torn landscape stretched endlessly under a darkened sky, jagged rock formations silhouetted against the dull glow of distant fires. Acid rain hissed as it struck shattered armor and bloodied soil. Gabriel Reyes trudged forward, his exosuit servos whining softly with each step. His squad followed in tense silence, weapons raised, eyes scanning for movement. They had been in enemy territory for 3 days now, and the Zorati were masters of ambush. Reyes felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him, but it was nothing compared to the oppressive atmosphere of the battlefield. The Zorati, towering 8-foot monstrosities with chitinous exoskeletons and 4 powerful arms, had been relentless. To Reyes they seemed less like aliens and more like living weapons. Yet, as he surveyed the carnage ahead, he felt no triumph, only a grim sense of futility. Scattered across the clearing were the bodies of soldiers from both sides. "Another slaughter," muttered Corporal Hayes, his voice crackling through the squad's comms. Reyes raised a hand, signaling silence. Something felt off. The battlefield was too quiet. The only sounds were the rain and the occasional groan of shifting metal. As they moved forward cautiously, a low guttural rasp, cut through the air. Reyes stopped, scanning the area with sharp, practiced eyes. Then he saw it. A lone Zorati slumped against a crumbled boulder, its massive frame riddled with wounds. "Contact," whispered Private Lyle, raising his rifle. "Hold fire," Reyes ordered, stepping closer. "Sir, that thing's still alive." Hayes hissed, his weapon trained on the creature. Reyes ignored him, his focus entirely on the Zorati. The alien's mandibles twitched, and its eyes, large, segmented, and eerily human in their sorrow, met his. The creature was unarmed, one of its 4 arms hanging limp, the chitin cracked and bleeding a viscous, green fluid. It didn't move to attack. Instead, it let out a soft, rattling noise that Reyes could only interpret as pain. "Orders are clear, Sergeant," barked Lieutenant Vale over the comm. "Finish it." Reyes hesitated. Something about the Zorati's posture, the way it clutched at its side, the faint, almost pleading tone of its breathing, gave him pause. This wasn't an enemy combatant anymore. It was a wounded soldier. "It's not a threat," Reyes said, lowering his rifle. "Are you kidding me?" Hayes snapped. "That thing's probably a scout. We leave it alive, it'll call in reinforcements." Reyes took a cautious step forward, ignoring the rising protests from his squad. He crouched down, bringing himself closer to the Zorati's level. The alien tensed but didn't attack. Slowly, Reyes reached into his pack and pulled out a canteen of water. "Sir, this is insane," Lyle said, backing away. "It's dying," Reyes replied firmly, his voice quiet but steady. "Look at it. Does that look like an ambush predator to you?" He held the canteen out, his movements deliberate and slow. The Zorati's mandibles twitched again, and after a long moment, it extended one unsteady arm. Its massive claw grasped the canteen with surprising gentleness, bringing it to its cracked mandibles. The alien drank. For a moment, the clearing was silent except for the rain and the soft sound of the Zorati's labored breathing. Reyes felt his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't understand why, but he felt a connection to this creature. A fragile, unspoken understanding. "It's just a soldier," Reyes murmured, his gaze locked on the Zorati. "Same as me." The rain had stopped, but the air was heavier than ever. The squad moved in tense silence, every step filled with unspoken judgment. The Zorati walked beside them now, not behind, matching their pace like it belonged. Its armor was scarred, its gait uneven from battle wounds, but it never faltered. Reyes noticed the shift. The others did too. "Still think this is a good idea, Sergeant," Hayes muttered, his voice low but sharp. "Letting it walk with us like it's one of the team. Worked out fine back there, didn't it?" Reyes shot back, his eyes locked ahead. "We'd all be dead if it hadn't flanked those shooters." "Doesn't change what it is," Hayes said, eyes narrowing. "We trust it today, it guts us tomorrow." "Sounds familiar," Reyes muttered under his breath, thinking of every battle he'd fought with human soldiers who'd lost themselves to fear. They pressed on, moving between jagged cliffs that funneled them into a narrow pass. Too exposed. No good angles. Reyes signaled for them to stay sharp. His gaze shifted to the Zorati, who glanced at him once and then scanned the ridges above. It was learning more than just how to fight. It was learning how to survive. "Lieutenant, how far to the rendezvous?" Reyes asked over comms. Another 3 clicks, Vale responded. "Keep moving. Stay tight." They moved in single file, eyes flicking to every ridge, every shadow. The silence wasn't normal. Ambush terrain like this should have been crawling with hostiles. Something was wrong. Reyes could feel it like a storm building behind his eyes. "Got a bad feeling, sir," Lyle whispered, gripping his rifle tighter. "Stay calm," Reyes said, his eyes tracking movement along the cliffs. His gut twisted. The feeling of static was back. Not painful, just there. His mind prickled with flashes of something just out of reach, like trying to remember a dream. His gaze shifted to the Zorati, and it was already staring at him. Its eyes narrowed with intensity. Then it hit him. New. "Ambush!" Reyes shouted just as plasma fire erupted from both sides of the pass. The squad dove for cover, sparks and molten metal flying as shots slammed into the rocks. Hayes cursed as he crawled behind a boulder. His face twisted with panic. "Pinched! We're pinched," he yelled, firing blindly toward the ridges. "Push left! Push left!" Vale barked, laying down cover fire. "Reyes, get that thing under control." But the Zorati was already moving. No hesitation. No confusion. It darted toward the ridge, scaling the rock face like it had claws made for climbing. Reyes watched in stunned disbelief as it reached the top in seconds. Plasma bolts shot past it, but it never stopped. It reached the enemy's position, ripping the first shooter from his perch and tossing him down like scrap metal. "It's on him!" Lyle gasped, barely able to believe what he was seeing. "Push!" Reyes roared, surging forward with his squad. They moved together, suppressing fire cutting into the ridges as the Zorati fought above them. It wasn't just brute force anymore. The creature used cover, ducked behind rocks, and fired its stolen rifle with deadly precision. The enemy line crumbled in minutes. Reyes and his squad reached the top, standing in the wreckage of the ambush. Broken weapons. Blood-stained rock. The Zorati crouched over one of the fallen enemies, breathing hard, claws stained with green and red. "You see that?" Lyle's eyes darted between the Zorati and Reyes. "That wasn't luck, Sergeant. That was tactical." "Yeah," Reyes muttered, eyes narrowing. "It's not just following orders anymore." Hayes stepped forward, his jaw tight, sweat glistening on his face. His eyes flicked to Reyes, then to the Zorati. "And that's the problem, isn't it? It's thinking. Learning. Next thing you know, it's thinking about which one of us it takes out first." "Back off, Hayes," Reyes warned. "Back off." Hayes barked, gesturing wildly. "This isn't some stray dog you can train. It's an alien killing machine. You think it cares about us just 'cause it shot at the other guys. It's biding its time, Reyes." "Hayes, stand down," Vale ordered, his voice hard as steel. But Hayes wasn't listening anymore. His hands shook as he gripped his rifle tighter, eyes wild with fear. "We finish it now before it finishes us," he said, taking a step toward the Zorati. The creature saw him. Slowly it stood, watching Hayes with a stillness that was more dangerous than any snarl or growl. Its eyes locked on him, not with rage but with understanding. It knew what was about to happen. "Don't," Reyes said quietly, stepping between them. "You fire on it, you fire on me. Are you hearing yourself, Sergeant?" Hayes barked, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You're picking it over us." "I'm picking survival," Reyes growled, his eyes sharp and cold. "You want to survive, you don't shoot the thing that just saved your life." Hayes's breathing came fast and shallow, his hands tightening on his rifle. His gaze flicked between Reyes and the Zorati, panic and pride fighting for control. This isn't right, Reyes. You know it isn't right. Right doesn't matter, Reyes said, his voice calm but firm. What matters is we get out of here alive. And right now it's got a better kill record than you do. Silence. The rain started again, soft and steady, tapping against their armor. Hayes lowered his rifle but didn't stop glaring. He turned and stomped away, muttering curses under his breath. You good, Sergeant? Vale asked quietly over comms. Yeah, Reyes replied, watching Hayes disappear down the slope. I'm good. But as he turned back to the Zorati, he saw something that made him pause. It was still watching him, but its gaze was softer now. There was no threat in its posture, no sign of violence. Instead, it tapped its chest twice with its claw. Reyes felt that static buzz in his head again. Warmth. Recognition. The image of the crystalline rivers flashed through his mind, brief but clear. It wasn't just sharing memories anymore. It was sharing intent. Yeah, Reyes muttered, wiping rain from his face. I know. He stepped forward, close enough to see the small, fine cracks running along the Zorati's armor. Its wounds were worse than he'd thought. He reached into his pack, pulled out a medfoam canister and held it up. The Zorati tilted its head, studying the object. Reyes activated it, letting the foam hiss onto his arm as a demonstration. The Zorati blinked slowly, then extended its wounded arm. Its eyes stayed on him, watching for any sign of deception. Trust goes both ways, big guy, Reyes said softly, applying the foam to its wound. The Zorati didn't flinch. It just watched him, the same way a soldier watches a brother-in-arms patch him up after a fight. The foam hardened, sealing the cracks in the chitin. Reyes pulled back and met its gaze. No words, just quiet understanding. Move out, Vale's voice cut through the moment. 2 clicks to rendezvous. Reyes slung his rifle over his shoulder, eyes still on the Zorati. You coming or what? The Zorati tilted its head, considering. Then it stepped forward, falling in line with the squad. No one said a word. No one needed to. This time it didn't walk behind them. It walked beside Reyes.